He once walked away from a home filled with love, believing the world outside those hills could offer him something greater. But the same world that welcomed him with music, gold, and pleasure abandoned him the moment he had nothing left to give. And while the entire world forgot the name of that broken son, one grieving father still waited beside an open gate, hoping to see him return alive. Grab your popcorn, get ready to watch the legendary story of the prodigal man. Nobody noticed the fear inside him yet, but every night, the younger son kept running through the sleeping streets like he was chasing a life that refused to stay still. The estate looked peaceful from the outside.
Father!
Then one night, everything shattered. The younger son stood before his father and demanded the inheritance like the family meant nothing to him anymore. The older brother could barely believe what he was hearing. To him, this was not freedom. It was betrayal happening in front of the entire household. But instead of answering with anger, the father answered with pain. Because deep down, he already knew money could never heal a heart that wanted to leave. That night, the younger son packed in secret while rain struck the windows beside him. He believed freedom was waiting somewhere beyond the hills of Judea. Before dawn, the father entered quietly and found his son ready to leave. And in that silent room, love gave one final warning. At sunrise, the estate gates opened slowly. And while servants watched in silence, the younger son walked away from the only home that truly loved him. Long after the road became empty, the father still stood beside the gates, praying the world would not destroy the son he could no longer protect. Days later, the younger son reached a foreign city, overflowing with music, gold, and crowds. And for the first time in his life, nobody there cared who he truly was. The city welcomed him with laughter, parties, and strangers pretending to be friends. And slowly, the younger son confused pleasure with freedom. But fake love disappears quickly when the money disappears first. Soon, the younger son woke up alone in a filthy room with nothing left but regret. Then famine struck the city like a curse. The same streets once filled with celebration suddenly became filled with hunger, fear, and desperate people. Still, he tried one last time to escape the emptiness, but no amount of music, wine, or noise could silence the loneliness growing inside him anymore. The next morning, the world finally showed him its real face. Without gold in his hand, the city threw him away like he never mattered at all. Hungry and exhausted, the younger son wandered through cold, unfamiliar streets. Yesterday, people called him brother. Today, they would not even look at him. By sunset, he collapsed beside a public well while strangers mocked him openly. The rich young man who once had everything now had nothing left except shame. Then, through the fog, a rough farm owner approached slowly with a lantern. And the younger son accepted work that once would have disgusted him completely. Before sunrise, freezing rain covered the muddy hills. And with every painful step behind the lantern, the younger son realized freedom had led him into misery. The rotten gate opened to reveal filthy pig pens stretching across the mud. This was the new life waiting for the son who once dreamed of greatness. Days passed slowly beneath humiliation and exhaustion. Workers laughed while the younger son dragged heavy buckets through the mud beside hungry pigs. At night, he sat alone inside the freezing shelter while rain leaked through the broken roof. And somewhere deep inside him, memories of home finally began to hurt again. Far away in Judea, the father still walked to the estate gates every evening. Because some hearts never stop waiting for the people they love. Meanwhile, the older brother buried his bitterness beneath endless work. But every mention of the missing son reopened the wound inside him. One gray morning, hunger pushed the younger son toward the pig's food itself. And in that moment, he barely recognized the broken man he had become. Then thunder shook the farm violently. And suddenly memories of warm bread, family, and peace came flooding back stronger than ever before. Before dawn, the younger son packed his torn belongings quietly, not because he believed he deserved forgiveness, but because home was the only place left to run. As sunrise touched the hills of Judea again, a lonely figure appeared far down the southern road, and servants began whispering in shock across the fields. Every painful step through the rocky hills reminded him how far he had fallen. Still, the younger son kept walking toward the home he once abandoned willingly. At the estate, nervous servants gathered beside the fences, because the traveler approaching from the road looked nothing like the rich young master they remembered. Then the father stepped outside the gates and stared toward the distant road. And suddenly, hope returned to a heart that had suffered for years. The younger son lowered his eyes in shame as the estate came fully into view. The home he once treated like a prison now looked more beautiful than ever before. Without warning, the father dropped his walking stick and started running, and the servants watched in total shock as love outran dignity itself. The younger son collapsed to his knees beside the road. But before shame could finish speaking, his father wrapped both arms around him. The son tried to continue apologizing through tears, but the father cared less about the past than the fact his child finally came home alive. Then joy exploded across the estate. The father ordered robes, food, and celebration because the lost son had returned. Servants rushed through the halls carrying lanterns, robes, and feast tables, and slowly, life returned to a household that had carried sorrow for years. But not everyone celebrated. Far from the music, the older brother stopped in confusion as frustration rose inside him once again. Near the courtyard entrance, the older brother grabbed a servant angrily, because something inside him already feared exactly what had happened. Then the servant revealed the truth. The younger brother had returned home, and the father was celebrating instead of punishing him. Bitterness pulled the older brother away from the feast hall. While joy filled the mansion behind him, anger filled the darkness ahead. When the father heard his son refuse to enter, he quietly left the celebration.
Why stand alone?
Because even in the middle of joy, love still chases wounded hearts. Years of hidden frustration finally exploded from the older brother. He had stayed loyal every day. Yet the son who wasted everything received the celebration. The father stepped closer, calmly beneath the olive trees, and gently reminded his son that mercy matters most when someone returns from darkness alive. Inside the feast hall, the younger son sat quietly among laughter. Outside, the older brother stared bitterly toward the glowing feast hall. He could not understand why forgiveness felt so unfair. Then the father placed one hand on his shoulder and reminded him that pride divides families while mercy restores them. For several long moments, the older brother stood frozen between anger and love, and the entire estate waited to see which one would win. Later that night, the younger son wandered alone through the quiet hallways, because even forgiven hearts still struggle to forgive themselves. Far away at the farm, cruel workers laughed after discovering he disappeared. But the younger son no longer belonged to that life of shame anymore. Back at the estate, the father searched quietly through the halls, until he found his son sitting alone beneath dim lantern light. Tears returned as the younger son confessed everything openly: the gold, the pride, the betrayal, and the pain he brought upon the family. But the father gently lifted his son's face again, because to him, a restored life mattered more than every lost coin combined. Outside, beneath the olive trees, the older brother sat alone with his bitterness, learning that forgiveness can sometimes feel harder than anger itself. Before dawn, the younger son stood quietly overlooking the peaceful valley, and finally understood that the peace he chased across kingdoms had always been here. As sunrise returned to the estate, workers slowly resumed their routines, and whispers about the younger son began spreading across every field and hallway. The older brother watched silently while the younger son worked beside servants humbly. And for the first time, doubt began softening into understanding. That evening, the father gathered both sons beneath the olive trees and reminded them that families survive because love keeps lifting fallen people back up. Before sunrise, the younger son joined the servants in the misty fields. The former prince now worked quietly beside ordinary workers. From the balcony above, the father watched silently with pride, because the reckless boy who once chased freedom had returned as a wiser man. Later that morning, the younger son entered the stable carrying fresh water nervously, finally ready to face the brother he had wounded deeply. The older brother worked in silence for several long moments, before finally admitting the younger son had broken more than just their father's heart. Painful memories overwhelmed the younger son once again, and he confessed that every terrible thing people believed about him had once been true. Outside, heavy rain suddenly crashed across the estate, while inside the stable, years of tension still hung silently between the brothers. Then the older brother stepped beside him quietly beneath the doorway, and for the first time since the return, kindness finally replaced bitterness. The younger son turned in stunned silence, because hearing forgiveness from his brother felt almost impossible after everything he destroyed.
You are my brother.
Without another speech, the older brother handed him a water bucket. Sometimes healing begins with the smallest acts instead of the biggest words. By evening, both brothers worked side by side beneath glowing lantern light, and servants whispered that the family finally felt whole again. Days later, villagers filled the marketplace with stories about the younger son, not because he became richer, but because suffering changed his heart. Near the market well, the younger son stopped to help a struggling traveler, because people who understand pain often become the quickest to show kindness. That evening, the father watched both sons laughing together beside the olive fields and realized the family he thought was broken forever had finally healed. As night covered the estate, lanterns glowed warmly through every window, and peace returned to the halls that once carried sorrow and division. Beyond the valley, the endless road disappeared into darkness beneath the stars, a reminder that wandering hearts can still find their way home again. The next morning, the younger son walked alone through the olive fields peacefully, and understood that purpose is not found in noise, wealth, or escape. Throughout the marketplace, travelers shared stories about the rich son who returned wiser, because true transformation spreads farther than pride ever could. High above the estate, the younger son looked down across the peaceful valley and realized he almost traded love itself for emptiness. Meanwhile, the father repaired the old estate gate carefully, because homes built on love always leave the door open for returning hearts. Late that night, old fears returned quietly beside the rainy window. The younger son still feared becoming the selfish person he once was. Then the father entered softly through the doorway and reminded his son that surviving failure matters more than pretending perfection. Thunder echoed beyond the hills, while the younger son confessed his confusion. He still could not understand why forgiveness came so freely after all the pain he caused. The father smiled gently beside the fading storm and explained that real love survives even after people fail completely. Before leaving the room, the father paused beside the doorway one final time and reminded his son that those who rise after falling often become stronger than before. Weeks later, the estate flourished brighter than ever beneath the summer sun, and both brothers now walked beside each other instead of against each other. Children laughed through the fields while the younger son shared bread with hungry workers, because the man who once wasted everything now understood the value of generosity. One quiet evening, the younger son returned alone to the estate gates, the same gates he once crossed believing freedom waited somewhere else. Behind him, the father and older brother approached together beneath glowing lantern light, and for the first time in years, the family stood together without division.